Hello and welcome to our online information webinar about the marriage and family reunion of the non-EU foreigners in Slovakia. Before we start, I would like to draw your attention to some rules that we will follow during this webinar. The whole webinar will be in English and it will be recorded. Your microphone and camera will be switched off. Please don't try to switch it on or share your screen. Don't use any applications or whiteboard. At the end of the webinar, there will be time for your questions. If you have any, please write them in chat. Please respect the speakers and other participants of the webinar. Note that who will ignore these rules will be removed. Thank you. For those of you just joining us, welcome to this online information webinar. Today we will talk about the marriage and family reunion of the non-EU foreigners in Slovakia. Please note that if you are a citizen of any EU member state, majority of the information included in this webinar doesn't refer to you, but it is applicable only to nationals outside of the European Union. Today's presenters will be Lydia and Ivana, legal consultants from IOM Migration Information Centre that is providing you this webinar. Therefore, let me start by briefly introducing our center. MIG was founded in 2006 in Bratislava. Its aim is to help foreigners to integrate into the Slovak labor market and society. We offer our services to non-EU nationals who have been already granted a temporary, permanent or tolerated residence, or who wish to apply for any of these types of residence in Slovakia. Other beneficiaries of mixed services are Slovak citizens helping foreigners or employers of non-EU nationals, and we cooperate also with communities of migrants through our cultural mediators. Migration Information Centre offers free legal counseling regarding residence, employment, business, citizenship, and other relevant legal issues. Moreover, MIG provides free employment and social counseling, so if you are looking for a job, our experts can help you with editing your CV, prepare you for job interview, and provide overall support in mapping the Slovak labor market. If you are looking for educational or retraining course, we can offer you a financial contribution, provided that the course will help you find a new job, improve your current employment or business. Migration Information Centre is also well known by providing open courses of Slovak language and social and cultural orientation. Now let's move to the main topics of this webinar, and we will start with marriage in Slovakia. Slovak legislation considers marriage to be the union between a man and a woman whose purpose is the establishment of a family and the raising of children. Therefore, it is not possible to conclude a marriage between persons of the same gender. The Slovak Republic currently has no legislation which would regulate common law marriage or partnership. In Slovakia, a marriage is concluded either at the registry office before the municipal head or delegated members of the municipal council in the presence of the registrar, or before ministers of registered religions in Slovakia. The declaration is made public in a solemn manner in the presence of two witnesses. The ceremony is conducted in the Slovak language. Therefore, if at least one of the fiancés doesn't speak Slovak, the presence of an official interpreter is required at the ceremony. You can find a list of official interpreters at the website of the Ministry of Justice of Slovak Republic. If you decide for a wedding at the registry office, a declaration of marriage needs to be done at the registry office of the jurisdiction where you or your fiancé resides. If neither of you have permanent residency in Slovakia, then any registry office may be used. In order to conclude the marriage at another registry office or elsewhere other than a formal marriage hall, a permit is required by the relevant registry office. This is not applicable when the life of the one of the fiancés is directly threatened. In this case, you can conclude marriage before any registry office or at any place. As I mentioned, marriage may also be concluded before a religious body or religious organization registered in Slovakia. A list of them can be found on the website of the Ministry of Culture. If you decide to have a church wedding, it is necessary to confirm the conditions for concluding a marriage with the competent authority of the church in advance. Depending on the particular church, these conditions may consist of essential teachings and meetings with the priest, and this may take several months. Depending on some churches, some documents may be required in addition to the ones mandatory for a civil wedding. If you meet all the conditions of marriage set out by your church, you may proceed with the wedding in the same manner as having a wedding at the registry office. This means that in both cases, you shall submit all the required documents to the competent registry office no later than 14 days prior to the conclusion of your marriage. So let's take a look at the list of documents you need to prepare as a foreigner who would like to get married in Slovakia. You will obtain an application for conclusion of marriage from the registry office, and it needs to be filled out in Slovak language. Also, you need to submit your birth certificate that shall contain your name, surname, date, and place of birth, as well as relevant data about your parents. If the birth certificate doesn't contain data on your parents, then usually the marriage certificate needs to be submitted as well. Next one is a document confirming citizenship, for example, your passport. You will need also a residence document. If you have permanent residency in Slovakia, this document is plastic identification card. Otherwise, this document is issued by the authorities of your country. Also, you shall submit the confirmation of your marital status issued by the authorities in your home country that cannot be older than 6 months. If you are a widower, you shall submit also the death certificate of your deceased spouse. If you are divorced, the divorce certificate will be needed. You can prove your identity by your passport. Please keep in mind that all documents issued outside of EU must be duly authenticated by either apostille or superlegalization in order to be recognized in Slovakia and translated into Slovak by an official translator from the list of official translators registered by the Ministry of Justice. Legalization is not required for documents issued by countries with which Slovakia has an agreement on legal assistance in civil and family matters. A list of these countries can be found on the website of the Ministry of Justice or at the registry office. If your spouse is a Slovak citizen, he or she needs to submit documents at least 7 days prior to the wedding. Mainly it is a birth certificate and valid identity card. Valid identity card proves his or her citizenship, residence, identity, and also personal identification number. If the Slovak citizen has permanent residence abroad, a certificate is issued by the country in which he resides. Also, you will be requested to pay an administrative fee. In case of marriage to a Slovak citizen with permanent residence in Slovakia, the fee is 70 euros. In the case to a foreigner, the fee is 200 euros. Also, there are extra fees if you would like to conclude a marriage at non-relevant registry office or outside of officially designated marriage location or during non-official hours. After the submission of these documents, the registry office will check and verify the accuracy of the documents and confirm the application form for marriage. If you opted for a religious wedding, once the application is confirmed by a registry office, it must be submitted to the competent religious authority. If you find yourself in a situation where you or your fiancé cannot attend the wedding ceremony in person, for example, because of pandemic situation due to the COVID-19, you may apply at the registry office for permission to marry by proxy. Your application must justify the circumstances in detail which prohibits your fiancé from being present at the wedding ceremony, and it must be supported by a written power of attorney for the proxy. This authorization must be in writing, and it shall include information stated by the law. The signature of the principal in the power of attorney must be officially certified. Only an adult natural person who is fully competent to perform legal acts may represent one of the fiancés. The proxy should be of the same sex as the fiancé that he or she substitutes. You may also conclude a marriage abroad with a citizen of the Slovak Republic in the same civil or religious manner before a competent authority and in accordance with the laws of the country where the marriage is concluded. In Slovakia, however, such a marriage may only be recognized if it is valid in the country where it was concluded and if there are no legal impediments regarding this marriage in the Slovak Republic. For example, condition of age, monogamy, and others. Should you decide to marry in a country in which you or your fiancé are not citizens, confirm as soon as possible whether such marriage is possible. There are many countries in the world in which marriage between two foreign nationals is not possible at all or require a residence permit on its territory from at least one fiancé, or the marriage undermines the length of the previous residency of the engaged couple. Currently, it is not possible to conclude the marriage between a Slovak citizen and a foreign national at the Slovak embassy abroad. A marriage between citizens of the Slovak Republic is only possible there at this time. So if you entered into a marriage with a Slovak citizen abroad, regardless of whether it is your home country or another country, a foreign marriage certificate was issued. In order for your marriage to be recognized in Slovakia, it is required to apply for its registration in an individual registry office in Slovakia. Registration enables you to receive a Slovak marriage certificate. You will need this certificate in Slovakia to prove your marital status and as a basis for obtaining residency. Individual registry offices do not accept applications directly at their workplaces. Your Slovak spouse must apply for registration at either Slovak embassy abroad or the registry office in the jurisdiction where he or she resides, or registry office in the jurisdiction where he or she had his last permanent residence in Slovakia, or if he or she has never had permanent residence in Slovakia at any registry office. Slovak spouse shall submit besides the application form also marriage certificate, valid passport or ID card to prove his citizenship, and death or divorce certificate if needed. The administrative fee is 25 euros if you are applying at the Slovak embassy abroad, and 10 euros if you are submitting the application at the registry office in Slovakia. If someone else submits your application on behalf of your Slovak spouse, also the written power of attorney will be needed. Please note that marriage certificate issued by non-EU country must first be authenticated in order to be recognized in Slovakia and then translated into Slovak by an official translator. Legalization is not required for documents issued from countries with which the Slovak Republic has an agreement on legal assistance in civil and family matters. Moreover, if your Slovak spouse is divorced and this divorce was granted by an authority of a foreign state, it is first necessary to submit the final judgment to the regional court in Bratislava that will recognize the decision of a foreign court in Slovakia. After submission of these documents, the individual registry shall register and issue you a marriage certificate within 3 months from the date of application. In justified cases, this period may be extended by another 3 months.
If you married a Slovak national and you intend to settle down in Slovakia, you have the possibility to apply for permanent residence permit. Granting permanent residence to a foreigner is regulated by the Act on Residence of Foreigners. For this type of residence can apply foreigner who is a spouse or a dependent direct relative of a Slovak citizen with a permanent residence in Slovakia, or a single child younger than 18 years placed entrusted to the care of a foreigner who is a spouse of Slovak citizen with a permanent residence in Slovakia, or a single child younger than 18 years of a foreigner with permanent residence for 5 years, or a child younger than 18 years entrusted to the care of foreigner with a permanent residence for 5 years, or a dependent child older than 90 days but unable to take care of itself due to a long-term unfavorable health conditions of a foreigner with a permanent residence for 5 years, or finally, if it's in the interest of the Slovak Republic. You can submit your application at any embassy of Slovak Republic abroad or at the Foreign Police Department competent according to your residence in Slovakia, if you fulfill one of the following requirements. You have a valid residence permit in Slovak Republic or in another EU member state, or granted tolerated residence, or granted national visa issued by Slovak Republic, visa-free regime. You are a holder of certificate of Slovak living abroad, or a Schengen visa granted by another EU member state, not Slovakia. It means that you can also apply at the foreign police at the territory of the Slovak Republic with Schengen visa, but only if they were issued by another EU member state on the basis of representation agreement between Slovakia and this another EU member state on granting Schengen visa. Submitting an application does not entitle you to reside in Slovakia. Until the permanent residence is granted, you are entitled to stay in Slovakia only during the validity of visa, visa-free regime, or another residence permit. If you don't have a valid residence permit and you wish to solve entering the marriage and residence during one visit of Slovakia, please consider this option. You shall submit all documents at least 40 days prior wedding ceremony at the competent registry office. Then it will take some time while your marriage certificate will be ready. And finally, the foreign police has 90 days to decide about your application. As the processing time for residency application is 90 days from the day of submission, be aware that in case the foreign police does not decide on your case by the time your visa or visa-free regime expires, you will have to leave Slovakia and the whole Schengen area and wait for the decision abroad. Now we are going to summarize the list of documents you need to submit with the application. The documents must be not older than 90 days at the day of submitting of application. Signatures in affidavits and tenancy agreements must be notarized. The application form must be submitted on the official form and in Slovak language. It also must be submitted in person, which means that either Slovak spouse, either third party, can do it instead of foreigner. You can download the application form at our webpage. Then you will need a valid travel document, passport, and 2-color photographs. Then we will need Slovak marriage certificate. Just a few notes to this point. Please do not submit the original of your marriage certificate but the notarized copy. As my colleague already mentioned, you need a Slovak marriage certificate. In case your marriage was not in Slovakia, it can be obtained by recording the marriage concluded abroad in the special registry through a registry office in Slovakia or a diplomatic mission of Slovak Republic abroad. This document and other registered documents can be older than 90 days. The next one is confirmation of permanent residence of Slovak spouse and a criminal record statement. Just a brief explanation in this regard. You must submit a criminal record statement from the country of your nationality and from any country where you have stayed for more than 90 days during 6 consecutive months within the past 3 years. Each document issued abroad must be duly authenticated for its use abroad. All documents issued in different language than Slovak and Czech must be translated to Slovak by a certified translator before being submitted to the foreign police. You do not need to submit the criminal record statement if you already have temporary residence in Slovakia. The next one is document on financial coverage of residence, and finally a document on accommodation. Please keep in mind that you and your spouse needs to live in the common household. It means having the same address. Therefore, if your Slovak spouse has not permanent residence registered at the place you live together, he or she needs to register the temporary address first. You are exempt from payment the administrative fee for permanent residence permit. There is only administrative fee €4.50 for issuing of residence card. As I mentioned at the beginning of this part, this type of residence is not only for spouse and minor child, but also for dependent, direct line relative of a Slovak citizen with permanent residence in Slovakia. This is usually a case of family reunion not with a Slovak spouse, but a minor child who is a Slovak citizen. The application process is similar to applying for this type of residence as a spouse of a Slovak national. However, the proof of family relationship would be your child's birth certificate, where you are stated as a parent, then confirmation about child's permanent residence in Slovakia, plus a proof of dependency on the child. The dependency itself is not defined in the law, so it could be even social or emotional dependency or both, but it's necessary to convince the authorities that it exists. In case the foreigner fails to convince the authorities about dependency, it is possible to apply for temporary residence irrespective of your children. If you have been granted the first residence permit and you are not in Slovakia, you must arrive within 180 days from the date of its granting, otherwise its validity expires. With this type of residence, you are allowed to study, work, and do business without limitations. You have also voting rights in local elections. You can travel and stay within Schengen area for up to 90 days. You have a public health insurance and you have same social security as Slovak citizen except social welfare benefit. But this resident does not entitle you to work or do business in any other EU member state. It's a common misunderstanding that marriage to a Slovak citizen does automatically make the spouse a Slovak citizen. The marriage makes a foreigner eligible to become naturalized in the Slovak Republic. Upon request, the Ministry of Interior may grant Slovak citizenship to an applicant who has married a Slovak citizen and obtained permanent residence in Slovakia. One of the conditions is that the marriage still lasts and the spouses have lived together in the common household in the territory of the Slovak Republic for at least 5 years immediately prior to filling the citizenship application. The permanent residence for unlimited period is a type of permanent residence granted under Slovak national law. It can be granted to holders of permanent residence for 5 years after 4 years of residence in Slovakia. Here you can see the reasons for cancellation of your permanent residence. In case that you were granted a permanent residence for 5 years based on your marriage, it can be cancelled when the foreign police finds out you are no longer living together with your spouse or when you get divorced within first 5 years of obtaining the residence. If you do not lead a joint family life, the foreign police can start the process of permanent residence cancellation even before the decision on divorce. If the foreign police starts the cancellation process, you can try to convince them that the consequences of the cancellation would be disproportionate to the reason for the cancellation, in particular with the regard to your private and family life. For example, if you have a minor child here who is a Slovak national and whom you are taking care of or supporting, The second option is to apply for a change in the type of your residence. You can choose some of the purposes of temporary residence, for example, for the purpose of employment or business. Termination of marriage sooner than 5 years since being granted the permanent residence for the period of 5 years is equally a reason for cancellation of the permanent residence status for an unlimited period of time.
If you have become the spouse of a foreign national from a country outside the EU who has the legal right to reside in Slovakia on the basis of a temporary or permanent residency, it doesn't mean that you too will obtain this right by the conclusion of marriage. You first need to apply for a residence permit. Slovakia grants in such cases temporary residence for family reunion to a family member of foreign nationals with granted temporary or permanent residence. Under the family member, we mean in addition to spouse also foreign nationals and his or her spouse's single child younger than 18 years old, dependent single child older than 18 years old, unable to take care of himself or herself due to long-term bad health condition, and parent who is dependent on foreigner's care and lacks appropriate family support at the home country. It is required to apply for temporary residency abroad at the Slovak embassy accredited to the country which issued your passport or in the country of your residence. You may apply at another embassy, however, only with permission from the Ministry of Foreign and European Affairs of the Slovak Republic. Permission may only be granted in cases when the Slovak embassy is not present or for reasons worthy of special consideration. In cases where you don't need a visa to enter the Slovakia or you are legally staying for another reason such as national visa, tolerated stay, valid residence, or you are a Slovak living abroad, you may apply for temporary residency in Slovakia as well at the Foreign Police Department, competent according to your future residence in Slovakia. If you do plan to apply for residency in Slovakia, always consider whether you can provide all the indicated documents so that a decision on your application can be made in time. If you are not granted a temporary residence permit within 90 days of entry to Slovakia or by the expiry of your tourist visa or residence, you will need to leave Slovakia as well as the Schengen area until a final decision on your application has been made. Application must be submitted in person. Only in the case of immobility can your family member submit it on your behalf. Let's take a look at documents that you shall submit with an application form and two color photographs. Valid passport. If by concluding your marriage you have adopted a new surname, it is necessary to apply for a new passport with your new surname in your country before applying for a temporary residence permit. Your old passport may be still valid for travel, however, it is not to use it when applying for a temporary stay in Slovakia. Next point is documents proving the purpose of residence. So if you are a spouse of a foreign national, usually it is required to submit a marriage certificate and a proof of residence of one of the spouses in Slovakia. If the applicant is a single minor under 18 years of age, usually it is required to submit a birth certificate of the child, proof of residence of the child's parent in Slovakia, an affidavit of the child's statutory representative that the child is single, and written consent of the second parent of the child who has the right to meet the child. If you are a single parent of a foreign national dependent on his care, it is required to submit a birth certificate of the child, proof of the child's residence, a document proving that you are single, for example, death certificate of your spouse, and a document proving that the parent is dependent on the child, for example, medical certificate. Next document that you shall submit is a criminal record abstract from the country you originate from and from country in which you stayed for more than 90 days over 6 consecutive months in the last 3 years. You shall also prove the financial coverage of your residence in the amount of the statutory life minimum for each month of stay. Currently, it is €214 and 83 cents per month. If your stay exceeds 1 year, the sum is calculated for 12 times the statutory life minimum. So the amount is €2,577 and 96 cents. In case of a child younger than 18 years, only half of this amount is required. You can demonstrate financial security by the affidavit of the sponsor with notarized signature that he will provide financial and material support during your stay in Slovakia, along with an employment contract, employer's confirmation on agreed height of the salary of the sponsor, or confirmation of the account balance from the bank in your sponsor's name. Next thing that you need to prove is that you have accommodation in Slovakia for at least 6 months or for the entire stay if you are applying for a temporary residence permit for a shorter time. This can be proven by affidavit about ownership of the property in case you own a house or apartment in Slovakia, or a lease agreement in which you are stated as a tenant or one of the tenants with notarized signatures of landlord and tenant, or notarized affidavit from the property owner who is providing you with accommodation, or confirmation of accommodation from hotel, hostel, dormitory, or any other accommodation facility where you are going to stay. Administrative fee is €132 and 50 cents when submitting your application at the Foreign Police Department, or €135 when submitting your application at the Slovak Embassy abroad. Children up to 18 years of age are exempted from this fee. Also, you shall pay administrative fee for issuance of residence document, which is in the amount of €4 and 50 cents, or €24 and 50 cents if you would like to have your document within 2 working days from the date that you were granted a temporary residence. Please note that documents cannot be older than 90 days at the time of submitting your application. All documents issued abroad must be duly authenticated in order to be recognized in Slovakia by apostille or superlegalization, and if they have been issued in a foreign language, they must be officially translated into Slovak language. Temporary residence for the purpose of family reunion may be obtained until the validity of the residence of the foreign national with whom you apply for a right to family reunion expires, but up to the 5 years. After being granted temporary residency for family reunification, you may study and do business without further limitations in Slovakia. You may also be employed, but only with a valid work permit from Labor Office for the first 12 months from being granted this type of temporary residence. After 1 year from the granting of the temporary residence for family reunion, you can work without any additional permits and restrictions. Temporary residence in Slovakia also allows you to travel and stay in other Schengen member states for more than 90 consecutive days without having to obtain a Schengen visa or other special permission to enter and stay. In the area of social security, you are entitled to the majority of family benefits under the same conditions as Slovak citizens. For further information, please visit our website or you can check our last webinar about the family benefits for foreigners from non-EU countries that is available at our YouTube channel.
If you are a family member of EU citizen, the following section of this webinar is applicable for you. This type of residence can be granted, for example, to spouses, children under 21, dependent direct relative, partners in duly attested relationship. You can find the complete list of eligible subjects for this type of residence at our webpage. Please note that Slovak citizen is not considered as EU citizen from the residence point of view. The exception is a situation when a Slovak citizen returns to the territory of the Slovak Republic together with their family member with whom they have a residence permit in the same EU member state. This must be documented by relevant documents. You should notify the foreign police of the start and of your place of residence. This should be done within 10 working days from the day of entering Slovakia. This obligation applies if you are renting, live with relatives or friends. If you are staying in a hotel, hostel, or similar accommodation facility, it is instead the responsibility of the accommodation provider. You should register your residence within 30 days from the lapse of 3 months from entering Slovakia. You can find the list of documents in our fact sheets for family members of EU citizens available at our webpage. After 5 years of lawful and continuous residence in Slovakia, EU citizens and their family members have the right of permanent residence. You can apply for residence card with validity of 10 years confirming this right. With the residence as a family member of an EU citizen issued in Slovakia, you will be able to study, do business, you will be able to work in Slovakia without any consent from the labor office, and you will be able to change employers freely. Your right of residence as a family member of an EU national is usually depending on your sponsor. In case of divorce, you lose this right in most cases. To preserve your right of residence, you need to be employed or self-employed or have sufficient resources and health insurance and at the same time fulfill one of the following conditions. Your marriage lasted at least 3 years, out of which at least 1 year in Slovakia, or you have a child entrusted into personal care, or your marriage is terminated due to domestic violence, spouse's dependence on alcohol, narcotic drugs, or other serious reasons, or you have the right to meet a minor child in Slovakia on the basis of mutual agreement of both parents of the child, or you have this right acknowledged by the court. Otherwise, upon divorce and not meeting the conditions, you would need to change the type of your residence. One of the last topics of this webinar is a case of residence for a newborn child. Within 90 days following the birth, you must apply for residence permit to your child. Here you can see what type of residence can your child apply for according to your residence. In general, if parents have different types of residence permit, the child is granted the more favorable type. For example, you can apply for a temporary residence for the purpose of family reunion for your baby as long as you have a valid temporary residence. Until the foreign police decides on your application, the stay of your child in the territory of the Slovak Republic is legal. If you fail to apply for the residence for your child, you shall be obliged to provide for the exit of the country within 90 days from his or her birth, unless there are serious reserves which prevent this. A very common question is the citizenship of a child who is born in the territory of Slovak Republic. A child of which at least one parent is a Slovak national at the time of his or her birth acquires Slovak citizenship automatically. A child born in Slovakia to foreign parents can acquire Slovak citizenship by birth only if the child cannot acquire citizenship of either of the parents according to the laws of parents' country of nationality. The type of residency that your child can receive depends on the type of residence which has been granted to you. You must apply for a residence for your newborn within 90 days from his or her birth. When applying for his or her temporary residence, you will need to submit the application form, a valid passport of the child or your spouse's passport in which the child is listed, 2 photos of the child, birth certificate of the child, document confirming accommodation in Slovakia for the child, for example, notarized affidavit of the owner of the apartment stating that he or she is providing accommodation for your child. And finally, a document on financial coverage of the residence. For example, your notarized affidavit on financial and material coverage for the child, plus your bank account balance confirmation. Minor children are not charged administrative fee for the submission of application. You will be only requested to pay €4.50 residence card. The decision should be issued within 30 days of submitting the application. Once you submit the application for the residence and having confirmation from the foreign police about acceptance of your application, you can register your child to the health insurance company. Please note that the registration should be done within the first 60 days as of the birth.
By each type of residence, we were talking about the associated rights that foreigners with this particular residence have. But as you most probably know, there are also certain duties that foreigners with granted permanent or temporary residence in Slovakia must fulfill. For example, you shall conclude a health insurance within 3 working days and submit a medical report that you do not suffer the disease threatening public health within 30 days from the collecting of your residence card. Also, if you were granted a permanent residence, you shall notify the foreign police in writing that you will stay for more than 180 days outside the territory of the Slovak Republic. If you were granted a temporary residence, you shall stay in Slovakia for more than half the time of the granted temporary residence in a calendar year. The complete list of duties can be found in this presentation or at our webpage. Please keep in mind that most of these deadlines were affected by the crisis situation due to the COVID-19. Some of them were extended by the period of crisis situation, some of them were suspended during the crisis situation, and the rest of them were not affected by the crisis situation and are still in force. You can find all information about the impact of the COVID-19 on your residence in Slovakia at our webpage or in our webinar available at YouTube channel of IOM Slovakia. We came to the end of our presentation, so now it's time for you to ask questions using chat. If you will be interested in our services in future, you can visit us in our office in Bratislava and Košice, or contact us at our phone numbers that you can see in front of you, or email us at mic@iom.int. Please note that in order to prevent the spread of the COVID-19, MIC provides its services currently mainly via phone and email. All information that we discussed here and even more can be found at our webpage www.mic.iom.sk. So now we will wait for your questions a little bit. If you have any, please write them in the chat and we will try to answer them. In the meantime, I will mention also that we have very useful fact sheets at our webpage in the section download and section fact sheets. So they are for every type of temporary or permanent residence. So you can find all information that we discussed here also there. Question from Bill. Thank you. I am US citizen. Is an FBI background check sufficient? Doesn't need to be notarized. So FBI background check is sufficient. It doesn't need to be legalized, but it needs to be translated by the official translator that is registered by the Ministry of Justice. Next question from Katarina. Our priest speak English and he will have an English mass. Do we need to give proof of translator before marriage? Thank you for your answer. So this is a question for maybe registry to discuss it with registry office because if one of the fiancés doesn't speak Slovak and he or she doesn't understand, then the translator shall be there during the ceremony. And if he understands, if he's a foreigner or he or she is a foreigner and he understands, then he needs to submit an affidavit that he understands the Slovak language. So I would suggest to discuss this case with registry office, and they will give you a definite answer.
The next question is from Emre. After 5 years of permanent residence, can I obtain Slovak citizenship? The general condition is 8 years of permanent residence in Slovakia. This exception is when you when you are married with a Slovak citizen. So this is the exception, but you still need to meet more conditions. You can find those conditions at our webpage in the section citizenship. There are all the conditions you will need to fulfill before submitting the application.
Okay, another question from Bill. After getting the 5-year visa, how long can I legally stay in the Schengen area? Still only 90 days. So if you were granted permanent residence for 5 years and you have a residence document from Slovakia, you can stay in other member states of Schengen area only 90 days, and it's supposed to be only for visit or sightseeing or for some trips. You are not able to do some for-profit activity, to be employed or do business in other member state without further permission from the country, from this member state. So yes, answer to your question is you can stay only 90 days with a Slovak permanent residence for 5 years. Okay, so question from Miri. Does the rules for family reunion apply for not married couples but living together for years? So you cannot apply for temporary residence for family reunion or permanent residence for 5 years if you are not married. So no, these rules are not applicable to not married couples. Only if you are applying for residence of a family member of EU citizen. So family member of EU citizen is also partner with whom the EU citizen has a lasting duly attested relationship. So if this is your case, yes, you can register your right of residence of family member of EU citizen in Slovakia. But if your partner is non-EU national, then you cannot apply for temporary residence for family reunion.
The next question is from Emre. My wife is a Slovak citizen. Can our child born in future have double citizenship? This answer to this question really depends on the country, on the second country, because it's not possible to have double citizenship with each of countries at the world. So it depends at some contracts that can have Slovakia with other state. It is possible, but it's not automatically. It depends at the state.
Next question is from Leona. I am engaged to someone who has temporary residence in Slovakia. Is it possible to get a visa to travel to Slovakia for marriage, considering the COVID situation? So there are no special visa for fiancés, for engaged couples. So it depends from which country you are. So you can either apply for Schengen visa or for a national visa. So it depends on your situation.
Question from Katarina. After marriage and after having permanent residence in Slovakia, while still being a university student, can non-EU national work full-time? Yes, with this type of residence, you are allowed to study and work at the same time. Martin asks, I am a UK citizen who owns an apartment in Bratislava and am living here at present. When UK leaves UK on 1st January, how long can I stay here before having to return to UK? We have colleagues who can answer your questions, so I would recommend you to check our webpage. We have colleagues who specialize to this area. So I would recommend you to check our webpage, see or check the email address, and you can write us an email.
Yeah, so you can see in front of you the web page that my colleague was talking about. It is for UK nationals, uknationals.iom.sk, where you can find all information for UK nationals. So thank you very much for your attention and your question. If there are still questions that we didn't answer due to the lack of time, please send them to our email, mic@iom.int, and we will reply to you as soon as possible. Also, don't forget that you can find all information at our webpage www.mic.iom.sk. Thank you very much for joining us and have a nice evening.